It did not take hours for Titanic to become a tragedy. It took 37 seconds. On April 14, 1912, at 11:39 p.m., lookout Frederick Fleet spotted something darker than the night ahead. The Atlantic was calm, making the iceberg almost invisible against the horizon. There were no binoculars in the crow's nest, leaving Fleet with only his eyes and instinct. He rang the warning bell 3 times. Then he picked up the phone and called the bridge. "Iceberg, right ahead!" From that warning to steel-scraping ice, only 37 seconds passed. In that instant, the largest moving object on Earth had to make impossible decisions. Every second counted, but the real mistake had already begun long before the iceberg appeared. And in those first moments, history quietly shifted toward disaster. First Officer William Murdoch reacted immediately after the warning reached the bridge. He ordered "hard a starboard" and signaled the engine room to reverse the engines. In 1912, steering commands worked differently. What sounded like a right turn actually caused the ship to swing left. Titanic began to pivot, but at nearly 22 knots, a vessel over 882 feet long does not turn instantly. Momentum carried her forward as the bow slowly shifted course. Seconds slipped away faster than the ship could respond. If Titanic had struck the iceberg head-on, damage might have been limited to fewer compartments. By turning, the ship exposed her side, increasing the length of contact along the hull. Every detail comes directly from British inquiry reports and survivor testimony. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel because no one else can give you research-driven videos like ours. When the iceberg finally made contact, it did not rip open a massive hole. Survivors later described it as a long scraping vibration rather than a violent crash. The impact lasted roughly 7 seconds, pressing along the starboard side. Many passengers barely felt anything unusual. Below the waterline, steel plates bent inward and rivets popped apart. Instead of one massive tear, openings stretched across multiple compartments. Titanic was designed to survive flooding in 4 compartments. That night, at least 6 were breached. Water began creeping in steadily, moving from compartment to compartment. Because the damage was mostly invisible from above deck, no one understood the true danger yet. Quiet disasters are often the most deadly, and Titanic had entered one silently. In Boiler Room 6, crew members felt a strange trembling under their feet. Thin streams of seawater were forcing their way through the hull plates. It did not feel like an explosion, so panic did not erupt immediately. Engineers tried to assess the situation while continuing their duties, but water kept rising. Captain Edward Smith was informed and met with Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, to inspect the damage. Andrews moved carefully from compartment to compartment, measuring how fast water was rising. Within minutes, he reached a devastating conclusion. 6 compartments breached meant the ship would sink. The sinking would take roughly 90 minutes. The watertight bulkheads were strong, but not tall enough to prevent water from spilling forward. Those early minutes of hesitation would soon prove to be irreplaceable. By the time lifeboats were uncovered, Titanic was already doomed, yet most passengers did not realize it. The ship was still brightly lit, and there was no visible chaos on deck. That calm created a dangerous illusion of safety. Many passengers believed it was just a precaution. The first lifeboat lowered carried only 28 people, though it could hold 65. Officers hesitated to force people inside for fear of causing panic. Titanic had lifeboats for about 1,178 people, but over 2,200 were on board. Even under perfect conditions, hundreds would have had no seat. Boat after boat descended half full into the freezing darkness. The tragedy was no longer about steel and ice. It had become about human perception and hesitation. Invisible danger can be far deadlier than visible catastrophe. As water filled the forward compartments, Titanic's bow began dipping lower into the Atlantic. The shift slowly changed the balance of the entire ship. Watertight bulkheads were strong, but did not reach high enough to stop water from spilling over. Once the forward compartments filled, water cascaded into the next sections. This chain reaction turned isolated damage into unstoppable flooding. Distress signals were sent using both CQD and SOS codes. Nearby ships tried to respond, but timing and distance were against them. The closest vessel, the Californian, was less than 20 miles away, but its wireless operator had gone off duty. Rockets seen from the Titanic were misinterpreted and ignored. Minutes slipped away, and in freezing water, every second counted. By around 1:40 a.m., the deck had tilted noticeably, forcing passengers to struggle to maintain balance. Third-class families tried to reach the boat deck, slowed by confusing corridors and locked gates. Language barriers and limited guidance made evacuation even slower. Some gates were eventually opened, but hesitation and confusion spread quickly. The band continued playing, maintaining order even as reality shifted beneath their feet. Routine gave passengers a false sense of calm amid growing danger. Lifeboats launched faster now, but the tilt made each lowering more difficult. Gravity worked against the crew and passengers alike. At this point, saving the ship was impossible. The only hope was who could reach a lifeboat before the Atlantic claimed them. Shortly after 2 a.m., the bow was completely submerged, and the stern rose high into the night sky. The angle became so steep that passengers struggled to stand without gripping railings. Loose furniture and equipment slid across the deck toward the freezing Atlantic. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, the ship was silhouetted against the stars. Structural stress increased rapidly as the flooded bow pulled downward and the stern lifted upward. The hull was not built to withstand these forces. Around 2:18 a.m., Titanic fractured under pressure and began separating. The ship broke into sections before vanishing beneath the surface. Over 1,500 people were now in freezing 28-degree Fahrenheit water. In such cold temperatures, the human body loses functional movement in minutes, and silence replaced thousands of voices. At approximately 4 a.m., RMS Carpathia arrived, carefully navigating through drifting ice. Survivors in lifeboats finally saw rescue appear on the horizon. About 705 people were pulled from the freezing Atlantic, but over 1,500 were lost. Investigations in the United States and Britain examined every decision made aboard Titanic. Testimonies revealed ignored ice warnings and outdated lifeboat regulations. Confidence in technology influenced both crew and passengers in the critical early moments. The disaster was not caused by one single mistake, but by layered delays and decisions under pressure. The iceberg was natural, but the human response shaped the tragedy. Those 37 seconds became a permanent lesson in how fragile certainty can be. History remembers Titanic not just for what struck her, but for what people failed to do. In the end, Titanic did not sink because of a single iceberg alone. She sank because 37 seconds forced irreversible decisions under extreme pressure. A lookout without binoculars spotted danger too late. A ship moving near top speed tried to turn instead of absorbing the impact directly. Watertight compartments were strong, but not tall enough to stop the chain reaction. Lifeboats were lowered half full because the threat did not look urgent at first. Each factor alone was manageable, but together they became fatal. The iceberg lasted seconds, but the consequences lasted generations. Studying Titanic is not just about engineering. It's about human judgment under a countdown that cannot be paused. If you had stood on that bridge with only 37 seconds to act, would you have done anything differently? Or would history have repeated itself exactly the same way?